William sworn in as king, Camilla's face turns white on live TV. As the live television cameras turned toward Buckingham Palace, the world witnessed a historic and deeply dramatic moment. Prince William, once known as the boy who lost his mother too soon and grew up in the turmoil of royal family conflict, had now formally ascended the throne, becoming King William. It was a moment at once solemn and profoundly moving, for William was not merely a new sovereign, but also a symbol of change and a beacon of hope for a monarchy long seen as fragile. Yet, amid the pomp and gravity of the occasion, one detail seized the public's attention. The cameras caught Queen Camilla's face suddenly paling, her eyes blinking rapidly as if to mask a storm within. She who had journeyed from the shadows of scandal, once branded the other woman to the official title of Queen Consort, seemed in that instant to grasp how precarious her standing had become. With William now on the throne, Camilla was no longer at the heart of power, but instead a wavering silhouette on the edge of the new king's brilliance. That fleeting expression ignited a wave of heated debate. Was this the dawn of a new era, one in which Diana's memory, William's mother, would once again be exalted, forcing Camilla to recede into an uneasy silence? Or was that pale face a forewarning of the hidden tensions soon to erupt behind Buckingham's gilded walls? The coronation of William thus became not only a milestone of history, but also the opening act of what felt like a royal tragedy in the making. The morning of 15 October 2024 had begun in calm routine within Buckingham Palace's opulent walls. King Charles sat at his desk, signing official documents with his customary precision. Elsewhere, Queen Camilla prepared for a charity luncheon, selecting her attire with the poise she had mastered over decades in the public eye. Prince William, miles away, was immersed in meetings about an upcoming environmental summit. But as the sun rose over London, unseen forces were already stirring, poised to alter the monarchy's path forever. At 9 a.m., Sir Clive Alderton, the king's private secretary, entered Charles's study, not alone, but flanked by the Attorney General, the Lord Chancellor, and two senior members of Parliament. Their faces were grave, their stride urgent, their early arrival highly unusual. "Your Majesty," Sir Clive began, his voice low but urgent, "we have received reliable intelligence of a serious security threat to the Crown. Immediate constitutional action is required." Charles put down his pen, narrowing his eyes. "What threat?" he asked. The Attorney General stepped forward, laying a thick dossier on the desk. "A coordinated plot," he said, "involving both foreign actors and domestic collaborators. Their objective is to destabilize the monarchy by releasing highly sensitive information. The threat level is severe and imminent." Inside the dossier lay evidence of irregularities in royal financial accounts, unverified yet explosive communications with certain world leaders, and testimony that close courtiers had been leaking intelligence to hostile networks for years. The Lord Chancellor added gravely, "The Prime Minister has been briefed. Security services recommend immediate transfer of authority to the heir. It would be a temporary measure, but vital to safeguard the institution." Charles leaned back in his chair, the weight of the proposal pressing upon him. "You are asking me to abdicate," he said quietly. "Temporarily, sire," Sir Clive replied gently. "But if you remain on the throne through this crisis, the institution itself may suffer irreparable damage." All the while, Camilla remained unaware. In her dressing room, she held a sapphire brooch against a jacket, considering her choice with calm precision. To her, it was simply another day in a relentless royal calendar. She could not yet know that her position, her public standing, even her life as queen consort, hung by a thread. Over the next 3 hours, constitutional advisors flowed in and out of the king's study. Every legal mechanism was debated, every repercussion weighed. Intelligence suggested the leaks could surface within 24 hours. If they acted swiftly, they might frame the transfer of power as a planned modernization of the monarchy. Delay, however, would mean scandal. Time was no longer a luxury. The final decision rested with the king. King Charles sat alone in his study after the officials had departed, staring at the abdication papers that would end his reign after just 2 years and 3 months. The irony was cruel. He had waited 73 years to become king, longer than any heir in British history, only to face the prospect of losing the throne almost at once. The security report before him was more terrifying than anything he could have imagined. Foreign intelligence services had apparently been gathering damaging material on the royal family for years, compiling a trove of documents and communications that could be unleashed to destroy public trust in the monarchy itself. The threat was not against Charles alone, but against the institution as a whole. Calls had already been made to pull Prince William from his environmental meetings, and discreet messages sent to senior royals that a constitutional crisis was unfolding. The machinery of monarchy was quietly preparing for a transition no one had ever expected to happen this way. At 11:45, Charles resolved to speak to Camilla before anyone else. He found her in their private sitting room, going over notes for her charity speech. She looked up with a frozen smile as she caught his expression. "My love, what is it?" she asked quickly, setting the papers aside. "You look as if you've seen a ghost." Charles lowered himself into the chair opposite, suddenly looking every bit of his 76 years. "Camilla, something has happened, something that will change everything for us." He explained the morning's revelations as gently as he could, watching his wife's face move from confusion to disbelief, and finally to horror. When he mentioned the proposed abdication, Camilla's hand began to tremble uncontrollably. "They want you to give up the throne," she whispered. "After everything we endured to get here." Charles's reply was heavy with exhaustion. "It's not about what they want. It's about survival. If this information comes out while I remain king, it could destroy the monarchy beyond repair. But if I abdicate now, William can begin untainted by scandal." Camilla shot to her feet and crossed to the window, staring out at the palace gardens. "And what about us? What about our life together? I've spent 17 years as your wife, building ties with charities, establishing my place in this family, and now you're telling me it all ends because of some conspiracy?" Her voice was raw with anguish. Charles knew that for Camilla, becoming queen consort had been vindication after decades of public scorn. She had finally gained acceptance and respect, only to see it stolen away by forces beyond her control. "William will need our support," Charles said softly. "This transition won't be easy for him either. He's not ready to be king." "William?" Camilla repeated, a hint of bitterness creeping into her tone. "Saint William, who can do no wrong in the public's eyes. Of course he'll be fine. He has Catherine. They are perfect children, and the blessed memory of Saint Diana to guide him." The mention of Diana made Charles flinch, but he understood his wife's pain. Camilla had fought tirelessly to step out from Diana's shadow and build a legacy of her own within the royal family. Now she was being asked to step aside once again, to make way for Diana's golden son, who had never had to fight for the public's approval as she had. Emergency summons. Prince William was in the middle of a spirited discussion on carbon emissions with environmental scientists when his private secretary appeared at the doorway, his expression immediately commanding attention. A discreet hand signal made it clear this was a royal matter that could not wait. "Gentlemen, if you'll excuse me for a moment," William said, stepping into the corridor where his secretary, James Harrison, waited, barely concealing his unease. "Sir, you must return to Buckingham Palace at once," James said quietly. "His Majesty requests your presence regarding a constitutional emergency." William felt his stomach tighten. The words constitutional emergency could mean many things, but none of them good. His grandfather's death had been handled with constitutional precision, yet this phrasing suggested something different, something unprecedented. "What kind of constitutional emergency?" William asked as they hurried towards the waiting car. I haven't been told the details, sir. Only that the Lord Chancellor, the Attorney General, and senior members of the security services are involved. The drive back to Buckingham Palace took 20 minutes, during which William's mind raced with possibilities. Was there an attack? A threat against his children? His father gravely ill? None of the scenarios he imagined prepared him for what awaited. Catherine was already at the palace when William arrived, summoned urgently from her own engagements. They met in the corridor outside the king's study, both looking anxious and unsettled. "Do you know what this is about?" Catherine asked, taking William's hand. "Whatever it is, it won't be good," William replied, just as the door opened and Sir Clive Alderton appeared. "Your Royal Highnesses, thank you for coming so quickly. His Majesty is ready to see you now." They entered to find King Charles seated behind his desk, looking older and frailer than ever before. Abdication papers lay scattered across the table, their weight immediately apparent. "William, Catherine, please sit," Charles said, his voice heavy with emotion. "I have something extraordinary to tell you, and you must understand that what I am about to say will change everything for our family." William listened in stunned silence as his father explained the security crisis, the threat to the monarchy, and the unanimous recommendation that he abdicate immediately. Each word felt surreal, as though he were hearing about someone else's life, not his own. "You're asking me to become king today?" William said when Charles finished. "I'm asking you to save the monarchy," Charles replied. "You are the only one who can do this. William, you have the trust of the people, something I may already have lost before I had the chance to regain it." Catherine's hand tightened on William's arm, and he could feel her trembling. At 41, she had long prepared herself for the role of queen, but not for decades yet. The idea of becoming queen immediately, with 3 young children at home, was overwhelming. "And what about Camilla?" William asked, watching as his father's face grew more pained. "That is the hardest part of all," Charles admitted. "She is devastated, as you can imagine. 20 years building her role within this family, and now it ends almost before it truly began. Preparing for the coronation, this next few hours passed in a blur of constitutional procedures, emergency legal meetings, and protocols not activated in modern times." William found himself thrust into crash courses on abdication law, succession rules, and the immediate duties of a monarch. The greatest challenge was time, to prevent the security crisis from becoming public before the handover was complete. Everything had to take place in hours instead of the months usually reserved for royal succession. The coronation would be reduced to a simple swearing of the oath, not the elaborate ceremony that normally crowned a king. "The full coronation can come later," the Lord Chancellor explained during one of the hastily convened meetings. "Today, we need only the constitutional essentials, the oath, recognition, and the formal transfer of authority." Meanwhile, palace staff worked frantically to prepare the throne room for the emergency ceremony. Broadcasters were quietly informed that a major royal announcement was imminent, though no details were shared. William spent an hour with constitutional lawyers learning the exact wording of the oath he would need to take. The traditional ritual was condensed into essentials, but every word had to be precise to guarantee the legality of the transition. Catherine, meanwhile, faced the practical shock of becoming queen overnight. Her attendants scrambled to prepare appropriate attire for the ceremony, while her private secretary began the monumental task of clearing her schedule and preparing for the immense responsibilities of her new role. The hardest conversations were with their children. George, Charlotte, and Louis had to be told that their father was about to become king, meaning their lives would change in ways they could not yet grasp. "Will we still live at home?" George, aged 10, asked, his eyes wide with worry. "Yes, darling," Catherine reassured him, though she herself was far from certain. "Some things will change, but we will always be a family." Charlotte, 8, was more practical. Will Daddy still help me with my homework? Daddy will always make time for what matters, William promised, hoping he could keep that vow. Louis, just 5, asked only whether this meant he would now become a prince, unaware that he already was, and that his role in the future had just grown far more important. The emotional weight of that day became unbearable for everyone involved. William could not stop thinking about how his life was about to change, how the freedom and relative privacy he once had would disappear forever. Catherine struggled with the reality that she was about to become one of the most scrutinized women in the world overnight. But perhaps no one suffered more than Camilla, who had spent the entire afternoon in her private quarters, trying to come to terms with the fact that her short reign as queen consort was about to end before most people even realized it had truly begun. The pain of a queen consort. Camilla sat in her private drawing room, surrounded by the symbols of the role she was about to lose. The official portraits taken only months earlier at Charles's coronation seemed to mock her from their frames. Invitations to state banquets, carefully planned charity events, painstakingly nurtured relationships with world leaders, all of it was about to become history, stripped of meaning. Her aide, Lady Philippa Morrison, who had been by her side for over a decade and understood better than anyone what this transition meant to Camilla, found her gazing out at the palace gardens, her face a mask of controlled despair. "Your Majesty," Philippa said softly, "the ceremony will begin in 2 hours. May I help you prepare?" Camilla turned from the window, and Philippa was shocked to see tears in her eyes. Through all the years, through scandals and public criticism, through the long journey from mistress to wife to queen consort, Philippa had never once seen Camilla cry. "Prepare for what?" Camilla asked, her voice hollow. "To watch my stepson ascend the throne while my husband is forced to give it up? To smile graciously while everything I have worked to build collapses? To support your family through an unimaginable situation," Philippa answered gently, "as you have always done." Camilla gave a bitter laugh. "Family. Do you know the irony, Philippa? I have spent 20 years proving that I belong in this family, and now I am being cast out by the very forces that once protected it." She was referring to the powerful figures who had once supported her marriage to Charles as a stabilizing factor, but who were now pushing her away from the center of the stage. "A queen is never cast out," Philippa insisted. "You are still the king's wife, still part of the family." "As what?" Camilla replied. "The former queen consort? The woman who held the title for less than 2 years? I will be a footnote in royal history, remembered only for how briefly I mattered." The pain in her voice was heartbreaking. She had endured decades of public condemnation, slowly rebuilding her reputation through charitable work and dignified public service. The role of queen consort had been her ultimate vindication, proof that she had earned her place in the royal family through perseverance and devotion. Now even that vindication was being taken from her, not because of any fault of her own, but because of circumstances entirely beyond her control. The security crisis that threatened Charles had nothing to do with her, yet she was paying the price. "The public will understand," Philippa said, though both of them knew that public sympathy was never guaranteed. "Will they?" Camilla rose and began pacing, her composure finally breaking. "Or will they see this as proof that I was never truly fit to be queen? That Diana's son was always destined to restore the monarchy to its rightful course?" The name Diana lingered between them. Even in death, Diana's presence overshadowed every aspect of Camilla's royal role. The comparisons were unavoidable and painful. Diana had been the queen of hearts in the eyes of the people, while Camilla had fought for years simply to achieve basic acceptance. And now William, Diana's golden boy, was stepping up to save the monarchy. While Camilla slipped back into the shadows, she thought she had escaped. "I need to prepare my dress for the ceremony," Camilla finally said, her voice regaining a trace of its usual control. "Whatever happens next, I will not allow them to see me fall apart in public." The ceremony begins. The throne room at Buckingham Palace had been transformed with astonishing speed into a setting fit for an emergency coronation. Representatives from Parliament, the Church of England, and the Commonwealth had been hastily gathered to witness this unprecedented transfer of power. William stood in the anteroom, adjusting the ceremonial robes that had been quickly altered to fit him. The weight of the fabric was nothing compared to the responsibility about to be placed on his shoulders. In less than an hour, he would become King of the United Kingdom and 15 Commonwealth realms, Supreme Governor of the Church of England, and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. "Are you ready?" the Archbishop of Canterbury asked, summoned from a conference in York to conduct the shortened service. "As ready as anyone can be for this," William replied, his voice calm, though his mind was in turmoil. Catherine appeared at his side, radiant in a hastily chosen navy gown that had become her coronation dress. Her face was pale but steady, showing the quiet determination that had carried her through years of relentless public scrutiny. "Together?" she asked, extending her hand. "Together," William confirmed, clasping it firmly. The great doors swung open, and they stepped into the throne room to face their destiny. The officials present rose to their feet as they entered, the weight of history filling the ancient chamber. King Charles sat in the chair beside the throne, wearing his full ceremonial robes for the last time. His face showed the strain of the day, but also a dignified acceptance, a recognition of the necessity of what was about to take place. And at the front of the witnesses sat Camilla. She had chosen a deep purple kun, the color of mourning but also of royalty. Her jewelry was simple, her makeup flawless, her expression carefully neutral, but those who knew her well could see the tension in her shoulders, the slight tremor in her hands as she clutched her small handbag. The ceremony began with the Archbishop's solemn declaration of the circumstances that had led to this unprecedented gathering. His words were chosen with care to frame the abdication as an act of selfless service rather than a departure forced by crisis. "Today we gather under extraordinary circumstances," the Archbishop said, his voice ringing through the chamber and out to the worldwide television audience. "His Majesty King Charles III has chosen to place the welfare of the realm above his own, transferring the sacred trust of kingship to his son and heir." As the formal words of abdication were read, public eyes turned to Camilla's face. Audiences around the globe watched as her carefully maintained composure began to crack, her complexion paling with each constitutional phrase that ended her husband's reign, and with it, her role as queen consort. The moment of truth. The constitutional machinery of abdication moved with ancient precision. Even as the ceremony unfolded at unprecedented speed, King Charles signed the official documents transferring all royal prerogatives to his son. Each stroke of the pen marked another step in Camilla's decline from the summit of power. "I, Charles Philip Arthur George, solemnly and sincerely renounce and abdicate my rights, prerogatives, and dignities as king," Charles declared, his voice steady but weighted with emotion. "I call upon God to witness this renunciation and pray that he will bless my son William as he receives the sacred trust I now surrender." The witnesses, including the Prime Minister, members of the Cabinet, representatives of the Commonwealth, senior clergy, and the royal family, silently observed as the crown passed from father to son under circumstances none could have foreseen. Camilla's reaction quickly became the emotional center of the day as Charles spoke the final words ending his reign. She swayed slightly in her chair. Lady Philippa, seated beside her, discreetly steadied her while keeping a calm face for the cameras. The color had drained from Camilla's face, leaving her pale against the deep purple of her dress. Her hands trembled as she watched her husband surrender the crown he had waited 73 years to claim, and with it, her own brief moment as the most exalted woman in the kingdom. As William stepped forward to take the oath, Camilla's composure fractured. A single tear slid down her cheek, quickly brushed away, but not before the cameras captured it for history. "William Arthur Philip Lewis," the Archbishop intoned, his voice resounding through the throne room. "Do you solemnly promise and swear to govern the peoples of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland, and of your other realms and territories according to their laws and customs?" "I solemnly promise to do so, no," William replied, his voice calm and resolute. Camilla watched the boy she had known since he was 15 become the king she must now serve, no longer an equal in rank. The most painful moment came when the crown was placed upon William's head. It was a simplified version of coronations past, yet its symbolism was immense. At 41, William Arthur Philip Lewis became King William V. Camilla Parker Bowles became once again the wife of a former king. The transition was completed as the officials proclaimed, "God save the king." Their voices echoed through the throne room and across the world via television. Catherine maintained perfect regal composure, though a flicker of strain crossed her face as her husband accepted the burden neither of them had expected for decades. As the ceremony concluded and William prepared to address the nation, Camilla sat motionless. Within 8 hours, she had gone from queen consort to former queen consort, from the second most important woman in Britain to a supporting figure in another's reign. Aftermath, the immediate aftermath of the emergency coronation was a controlled chaos. Palace officials scrambled to manage the unprecedented situation, while broadcasters across the globe cut into regular programming to cover the unfolding drama at Buckingham Palace. King William V's first act was to address the nation from the throne room, still clad in his coronation robes. The speech, hastily drafted but delivered with composure and authority, sought to reassure a bewildered public about the monarchy's stability. "My father's decision to abdicate was made in the best interests of the nation and the Commonwealth," William declared. "I accept the sacred trust of kingship with humility and resolve, pledging to serve the people with the devotion that has defined the British monarchy for over 1,000 years." As William spoke, Camilla remained seated, frozen in shock. The image of her stepson ascending the throne while she lost her royal standing had visibly shaken her. Lady Philippa and several attendants formed a protective screen to shield her from the cameras. The woman who had fought for decades to be accepted and to hold a place now faced the reality that both had vanished in a single afternoon. The practical consequences were immediate. Camilla's official engagements were canceled or reassigned, her patronages transferred to others, and her household staff reorganized. The life she had built as queen consort was unraveling before her eyes. Meanwhile, Catherine adjusted to the sudden elevation from Princess of Wales to queen consort. Unlike Camilla's gradual journey, her new role came without warning or preparation. A private secretary gently reminded her of the urgent changes in schedule and responsibilities. Catherine nodded, but kept her focus on William, who was surrounded by advisors as he began his reign. The man she had married 13 years earlier was now King of the United Kingdom, and the future of their family had changed in an instant. The royal children were kept from the ceremony, deemed too young to grasp its significance. Soon they would have to be told that their father was now king, their mother queen, and their lives would be forever altered. International reactions came swiftly. World leaders sent messages of support, and constitutional scholars appeared on television to explain the unusual nature of an abdication and emergency coronation. The speed of the transition left little room for diplomatic protocol, creating uncertainty about foreign governments' responses. Yet the most poignant reaction came from the British public. Social media overflowed with shock, anxiety, and sympathy for both the new king and the former queen consort. The hashtag Camilla's Pain trended for days as people expressed empathy for the woman whose decades-long struggle for a place in the monarchy had ended in a single heartbreaking afternoon. A new reality. 6 months after the emergency coronation, the royal family had settled into their new roles with the resilience that had carried the Windsors through centuries of upheaval. King William V quickly proved himself a capable and popular monarch, while Queen Catherine assumed her new duties with grace and focus. The security crisis that had triggered the abdication was resolved through careful diplomacy and enhanced intelligence cooperation. The threat to the monarchy was neutralized, But the damage to Charles's reign could not be undone. History would remember him as the king who placed the survival of the crown above personal ambition. Charles adapted to life as a former monarch with surprising ease. He devoted himself to charitable work and environmental causes, appearing lighter and more at peace without the weight of the throne. For Camilla, however, the transition was far more painful. To go from queen consort to former queen consort was devastating. The loss of status was bitter, but the loss of purpose cut deeper still. For 2 years, she had poured herself into the role, building relationships with charities, launching initiatives of her own, and finally winning the respect she had sought for decades. Overnight, it was all gone. The charities that once vied for her attention now turned to Queen Catherine. Invitations dwindled, her schedule emptied, and her sense of significance faded. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confided privately to Lady Philippa. "For 20 years, I worked to become queen consort. For 2 years, I was queen consort. Now I am nothing." Philippa reminded her of her accomplishments and her role within the family, but Camilla found little comfort. Watching Catherine step into the role she had lost with such ease was particularly difficult, though she maintained politeness for the sake of family unity. To many people's surprise, the public expressed sympathy for her. The image of her pale face during the coronation had touched hearts. They understood the pain of losing something earned through years of effort, especially when it was taken away by forces beyond one's control. William ensured she retained dignity within the family. She continued to attend major family events alongside Charles, and her charitable work received quiet support from the royal household. Still, it no longer carried the weight it once had. William and Catherine's children adapted well. Prince George, now second in line, began formal preparation for his future role. Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis enjoyed a relatively normal childhood, though under tighter security. Catherine's transition into queenship was smooth. Her warmth, dedication, and preparation made her instantly accepted in the role, as though it had always been her destiny rather than the result of a sudden crisis. As the first anniversary of the emergency coronation approached, the monarchy had regained stability. The upheaval that ended one reign and began another ultimately strengthened its resilience against unprecedented challenges. For Camilla, the day was bittersweet. It marked a year since she had lost everything she had fought to achieve, a reminder that in the world of royal ritual, the loftiest titles could vanish in an instant. She would remain a footnote in history, remembered for her brief reign and for the moment the world saw her watch it slip away forever. The sudden coronation of King William V was one of the most dramatic moments in royal history. But it was Queen Camilla's stunned face that captured the spotlight. Her pallor as she watched her stepson crowned with the throne she had lost offered a glimpse into the human cost of power and ceremony. In a single day, Camilla went from beloved queen consort to former queen consort, reminding us how swiftly life can change. Her fall from the highest seat in the kingdom revealed the fragility of status and the strength required to endure such loss under the gaze of the world.